Hello, my name is Stephen Dunn. I'm the author and creator of Hellenistic Christendom, and if you've made it to this video, you've made it to part 2 of my interview with Vic Cipolla, who is the author of Wait for the Corn, Lessons Learned from Being Married to a Porn Star, also author of the podcast Two Onions with his wife, who is adult film star Danny Daniels. Otherwise, just to kind of bring out a recommendation here as well, she's also a very well-known artist. I didn't know this until Vic mentioned this in my interview with him. So Kira Lee is her name, and those are going to be the artworks you'll find under her name, and they're absolutely fantastic. So the style, of course, is pointillism. She does portraits of various characters, songwriters, cartoon characters, and etc., and will actually craft portraits based on quotes, song lyrics, and different writings, and she'll construct a portrait that way, and they're absolutely brilliant. So I didn't expect the magnitude of her artistic creativity, and especially to the extent that she has these paintings displayed in official public museums. So be sure to check that out. I do have the links provided down below for that. That's really exciting, so be sure to check that out. I love art, so I'm definitely very excited to give that a shout out. So if you made it to this part of the video, this video takes it back as far as the conversations relating to pornography, perhaps more the ethics of porn, which we don't necessarily discuss, but the conversation kind of comes off the industry a little bit. We start talking about some kind of friendlier subjects, such as, for example, I'm a level 2 certified sommelier. I've worked as a sommelier in restaurants, and so he actually is a wine buff himself. So we talked a little bit about Burgundy, Bordeaux, our different favorite wines and stuff like that. So that takes place at the end of the video. He's also seemingly a film buff as well. Casablanca being one of his favorite films. It's one of my favorites as well, even though I've only seen it once, but it was brilliant. I still love Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman. But aside from all that, it's a really great, friendly chit-chat between me and Vic. I was absolutely astounded and amazed and surprised to the extent that not only we would probably agree on a lot of things, but we do have a lot of the same appreciations in life, probably for the arts and philosophy and really things of aesthetic value of that kind of sort. But anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this video as you hopefully enjoyed the last. Be sure to check out his podcast, also his book, Wait for the Corn. And also, as I said, be sure to check out his wife's work, Kira Lee, and her paintings that I'll provide links for, especially their book, podcast, etc. down below. So thank you so much. Please enjoy the video. God bless you. And be sure to follow the page if you already have it. Thank you.
It becomes, this is, I've had this conversation many times. This isn't reality. This is the Matrix, man. What you're seeing on screen isn't true, isn't real, this is as real as watching the Matrix. What you're seeing, it's a fantasy acted out for entertainment purposes, just like any form of entertainment. It's just this happens to include a lot of skin, but it is what it is.
I got you. So just a few more questions. The next one, if it's, like I said, I apologize if it seems like it's a loaded question, but do you have any insight for perhaps cultural conservatives, evangelical groups, feminists, or what have you, given the lessons you've learned from your perspective?
Yeah, it's so funny. Having worked in Republican politics, I dealt with a lot of cultural conservatives. Not my favorite group. I find there's a chunk of hypocrisy there as well. And I'll give you a perfect example. And again, I know you've read my book, but cultural conservatives will be pro-Second Amendment and anti-porn, yet children with access to gun and shitty parents have done a lot more damage than a kid watching porn or looking at a Playboy. If you're going to be pro-family, you should probably think that bullets are a greater public health risk than porn. And I'm pro-Second Amendment. And I'm pro-Second Amendment. But, there are some points in times where you have to look at it as a whole. I think there are a lot more values that are disintegrated by allowing parents to be irresponsible than there are for looking at pornography. And I really do believe that access to violent video games, a culture of drugs, a society that basically allows schools to raise your children, not being involved in your kid's life enough to know that there is a stash of guns underneath their bed, that's going to do a lot more damage to a family than if Johnny is picking up a Playboy. It just, in my opinion, I can't back that up with statistical facts, but my dad had always told me that one of the biggest things that a parent can do in life is to keep their children away from bad influences, that specifically bad peers. Children who are not necessarily following the right path are going to have way more of an influence on your kid than you will or your family structure will, because that's mom and dad.
Yeah.
You don't listen. You don't listen. I mean, 53 years old, looking back, going, "Wow, if I just listened to my father." But I'm 53 doing that. I guarantee you, my children are looking, going, "That's dad." But their friends are going to have a huge influence on them. So if your kids are running with a crowd that has lack of empathy or drug abuse or whatnot, it's going to be way more damaging than if porn exists in the world. Again, that's my opinion.
Yeah. I kind of feel like you'd appreciate this. I picked this up from a friend of mine. I used to work, I'm a sommelier, so I work in fine dining. And I came across a guest who gave me this one day. It's a Playboy with Donald Trump on the cover.
That's from you. That's got to be the 80s, right?
1990 is when it says.
1990, 89. Yeah. I love it. Some of you, you'll appreciate this. Sitting in my wine refrigerator right now is a 2010 Montrachet. So.
Oh, beautiful. When are you breaking that open?
When this ends.
Yeah.
That's going to be our celebration bottle.
No, that's beautiful. I saw that she posted, your wife had posted the dinner you had, and you had the Laurent Perrier.
That's the rosé. We did the rosé. Yeah.
My favorite rosé. That was beautiful. So
that's
awesome.
One of my. I actually like Perrier Jouet Florida Champagne. The rosé is one of my favorites. I'm a huge wine buff too. We actually took my parents on a trip to Normandy for the 75th anniversary of D-Day. And then we went to then we did Burgundy. My dad was a history teacher, so he turned 75. It was the 75th anniversary of D-Day. It just kind of worked out really well.
Wow.
So we did, which was emotionally devastating but awesome all at the same time, seeing all these old vets. And then we went to wine country and did this massive tour of Burgundy. And Burgundies are my absolute favorite wines, so we brought back way more wine than we should have. So.
Yes, I was fortunate. There's a restaurant down here in Florida called Burn Steakhouse. It's the world's largest privately owned wine cellar. So the only two that beat it in the world are the Queen of England and the Vatican. So it's like some a million bottles or something. It's amazing. But
gotta love the Vatican.
Yeah. At 20 years old, I got to try a Romagné Conti. So that was my claim to fame. So that's exciting.
One of my dear friends owns a wine store and has a 10-year vertical of DRC that we're like, maybe you want to break that out and let us all, I got a shot glass. I'm fine with just a shot glass.
We could talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the reason why I brought this up is because I was curious to run this kind of thought experiment to you. So there's an individual by the name of Gary Wilson who runs an organization called Your Brain on Porn. And he gives us an analogy.
Some of his books.
Yeah,
you want to laugh? Sometimes his book and my book comes up in the same searches for Amazon.
So he talks about in the 70s, for example, you had the Playboy centerfold. Let's imagine you're 13 years old and you're coming across the picture of a naked woman, and your imagination kind of goes. Like you could probably imagine what you would touch, what you would do, and etc. And now you fast forward to 2006, and now we have the kind of more pervasive free streaming tube sites where now these 13-year-olds have access to whatever they like, and they have the hardest of the hard. And now, rather than his information kind of going wild, the contents of his imagination are filled for him. So I wonder, what do you make of that kind of scenario? Because I suspect that. Go ahead.
I mean, look, you're a young man. trying to curb a prepubescent or pubescent teen sexual drive. Good luck. That's like trying to get the immovable object to butt up against the irresistible force. Good luck.
Yeah.
It's like you hand out condoms, you're going to give them thoughts of sex. A strong breeze is going to give them thoughts of sex. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. These are guys who fall in love with their school teachers, who, God forbid, their school teacher's wearing a blouse that's buttoned down to here. Everybody's trying to figure out how to look down it. I mean, I grew up. I was there. So did he. He knows what this is like. I don't know that filling their head with those fantasies are any worse or greater than the fantasies they're creating for themselves, looking at their sexy school teacher or their friend's mother or their cousin's sister or whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, I've seen some studies on the subject that have said that whether they're brought on at an early age and adapted to porn or not, that some of the statistics show that teenage pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections are dropped a bit when they are brought into a sexuality. But again, I think his problem and many of the other people's problems are piss poor parents. If you don't talk to your kids and tell them how you're supposed to treat a woman, how you're supposed to treat humans, what's good, what's bad. Your kids watching porn, don't beat the crap out of them or don't yell at them. Find out why and explain to them, hey, son, that is as realistic as that video game you're playing. You know, Grand Theft Auto, you got 13-year-old kids running around shooting and killing people. How isn't that filling their head with a bunch of fantasies that are horrible? You have television shows where, you know, every major criminal procedural drama, the woman is raped, murdered, raped and murdered, raped, murdered, and left for dead. I mean, you know, it's to say that if you took porn out, they wouldn't be still bombarded with massive, you know, sexual fantasies, violent fantasy is ridiculous. It's everywhere. Christ, if you go to an opera, most operas, women don't fail well in. You know, you go to an opera and a woman's going to get murdered, killed, be a tramp. I mean, you know, die some horrible death, be buried alive. I mean,
awesome. So I had 2 more questions. They're hang on, let me see. Oh, when I wrote this question, okay. So do you have any favorite adult performers, directors in the industry? But let me clarify that question, because I don't want you to get the impression like, hey, bro, can you hook me up with some good titles? It's more like, do you have any personal relationships in the industry that have, like, I don't know, that have impacted you or something that's significant to you?
Yeah.
Or, you know,
yeah, I get you. Whatever it is, something 3. You know? I mean, we do have, and obviously I'm literally married into the industry. My wife has a bunch of friends. We have friends who have attended, you know, who are at our wedding. You know, directors that are friends. I mean, we know them well. I crossed the line of watching. I mean, there's this like bizarre bell curve for porn where it ratchets it up to your 30s and then it really drops off, and most people in their 40s stop. I mean, the number is like crashes. Whether it's because they don't admit they're watching porn, or whether it is they just outgrew it. They're living life now. The stars start looking a little too young. Take whatever choice you want. But, you know, I kind of grew out of my at point in time watching porn a decade ago. So I didn't know. I don't know many of them in terms of their work. I know them as people.
Okay, I was just because I think I misheard. So you were saying that people usually stop watching, is what you said.
Yeah, it starts okay. You know, ebbing significantly after about 35, 36, 37, and then it's like it's this. You can take a look. The statistics online. Even if you go to Pornhub statistics, you know, they put all their stuff out. 40, boom, like a bad ski slope, like a ski slope you would not want to be on. And I can tell you, even in my kids, you know, I don't know if it's because life, because girlfriends, marriages, family expectations, job, work, whatever. You don't have the time, or you know, the people that were your favorites aged out and the new group looks a little younger. I have no idea, but it does statistically, it does drop off. So I can tell you for a fact that 99.9% of the people that I know in the industry, I've never seen their work. I just know them as who they are by their real names. They've become friends. I know their husbands, their boyfriends, their significant others, and you know, many of them we hang out with, we'll go out to dinner with, and you know, all of our friends kind of like you do with normal relationships. All your friends mix up sooner or later. So.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. My last 2. So I was reading in your bio. Can you really quote Casablanca from beginning to end?
From beginning to end.
Wow.
I've seen that movie so many times, it's not even funny.
Oh, I love that. I've only seen it once myself, so I just know the big quotes. But
yeah, the big ones, yeah. What if you the AFI, the American Film Institute, did the top 100 quotes in movie history. 6 came from Casablanca, and it has the most quotable of them all. The most amount of quotes came from Casablanca.
What was number 1? Do you know?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. From Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind, yeah. What's your favorite movie?
Casablanca.
Okay.
Yeah, Casablanca is my favorite movie, yeah.
No. And then, so I'm a sommelier, so I have to ask, what's your favorite wine? Which I think we probably talked about a little bit.
Yeah. Probably a Chambeau Musigny from Burgundy.
Beautiful.
I had a friend of mine who took us on a wine tour there. He's a great guy who described it as baby Jesus in velvet pants. He says
I'm stealing that.
Yeah, and I've told everybody steal it because it's not mine. Yeah, he said to describe how smooth it is. It's baby Jesus in velvet pants.
I love that. Yeah, sommeliers describe things really great. I remember I went to a tasting for a 1965 Richebourg, DRC, and the somm described it as like having sex with a really hot chick in like a 1965 Chevelle, and he just went into such detail about the leather and the sweat.
Yeah, and then you were like, okay, yeah. Yeah,
So,
we couple of weeks ago we finished an Escher show. That was awesome. But yeah, I'm holding on to the Montrachet. Montrachet is probably my second favorite wine. It's hard to get your hands on a Le Montrachet, but yeah.
No,
When we
sure.
stayed there, we actually stayed in Montrachet. We stayed in the town of Montrachet, which was awesome.
Did you really? Did you go to the different villages too, Pouligny and all that too?
Yeah. We basically went all over. We did a 2 full days of wine tour, and we tried something like 20 Grand Crus, and it was an awesome. I tell you what, if you ever get a chance, it's an awesome experience. I did Bordeaux. I know people. I'm not a Bordeaux fan. It's just not my cup of tea.
Really?
I enjoyed it, but Bordeaux is really corporate. I mean, you walk in the door there and everything's already sold on future markets, so you can't even get your hands on it. Whereas when we went to, Burgundy, it's a lot more free, a lot more open. You can buy bottles. It wasn't as stuffy. So I like the food better down there. So
I can relate. But that's all I had as far as my questions. Is there anything else like that you wanted to mention as far as like what you're doing or anything?
No, I'm sure there's a bunch of your viewers who probably think I'm a lunatic, but hey, buy my book. You might get some interesting perspectives.
Yeah, I'm baffled that first of all you have a background in political science, philosophy, and you're a Reaganite.
Yeah, die hard. I want to talk about somebody who's I could probably quote his speeches by. One of my favorite trips ever was going to the library in Simi Valley. Yeah, and wow. I can honestly say I got to meet him once. In 1988,
oh, really?
Towards the end of his presidency, I got to meet him at the CPAC convention, a Conservative Political Advocacy Conference, and shook his hand. And I honestly, I know you can't see it back here. I went to his funeral and was there in the rotunda.
Really?
I was standing in the rotunda when Gorbachev came in. So I got to see Gorbachev and Reagan in the same room, technically. Yeah, and I have the mass card. I have his campaign buttons from 1976. Yeah, I'm a diehard Reagan fan.
That's insane. That was like in 2004 or something, right?
Yeah, 2004. It's like June-ish.
Okay. Yeah. Dang. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was definitely 10 years old at the time.
Yeah, right. I remember flying. I was living up in Albany at the time, which is state capital of New York. I flew down the day of. Landed, got online. The line was like a Disney line. The line was halfway to if you know Washington at all, he was laying in state in the rotunda. I got there at 9, and I didn't get to the rotunda until noon in the dying heat of Washington, D.C. on a Disney line. Just went back and forth. And it was halfway to the Washington Memorial. You just walking. And when I got there at noon. They stopped the line. And we all paused for a second, wondering what it was, and Gorbachev came through, and it was a surreal moment. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I've been to Washington many times, so I know exactly the walk you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's just, like I said, they set it up like a Disneyland. It was back and forth and back. It was crazy. Yeah. I don't fit a lot of molds, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm really amazed.
Yeah.
Is Kara, is she conservative too or Republican?
Yeah, she probably obviously is socially somewhat liberal, not as liberal as you would think she is. Both of us are not very neither one of us have done drugs in our lives, believe it or not. My wife too. I'm actually allergic to a good chunk of them, but my wife's never done. She's the type of person who doesn't like that loss of mental faculty.
Yeah.
So she didn't like, she thinks she smoked marijuana once in her life, said she hated it, never tried anything else. So we're not, so we're socially liberal, probably on a more sexually liberated.
Sure.
Both of us are very, and always have been very fiscally conservative.
Wow.
It's kind of where we land in this weird, like Milton Friedman category of Republicans.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Hey, I'm down with that. That's awesome. Yeah. No, I just want to say thank you. It was really, really amazing to talk to you. I have almost practically a million other questions, I'm sure, about this whole thing, but this is really insightful. Thank you so much.
Really, and anytime you want to do this, I'm always up for it. I love doing these things. As you can tell, I have no problem talking. So
yeah, no, I love it. It makes my job easier for sure. Now, I was actually curious. So, is the Two Onions podcast your podcast, or Is it you and her that do it together?
We do it together. We've interviewed, it's an interesting podcast to watch because we've interviewed all kinds of people in that. And Two Onions being, we talked in the beginning, my last name means onion in Italian.
No, that makes sense.
So that's Two Onions. Here's a joke. I'm allergic to onions. Go figure.
Oh.
Yes, but
you're not missing much.
Yeah, exactly. We've done, we've had comedians on, Jim Norton, Sherrod Small.
Oh, wow.
We've had Broadway stars. We had the lead in Hadestown. We had the lead in Book of Mormon. We had the lead in Beetlejuice. We've had other adult film stars. We've had Instagram influencers. The guy who runs Subway Creatures was on. So it's this variety of people that we interview, and obviously, the adult film stars, and we get into. It's really kind of like more. It's not really. I ask 10 questions at the end of every interview, which is kind of like inside the actor studio kind of a situation. At the end, everybody gets the same 10 questions. But for the most part, it's just us. There's no real format. We just say, hey, what don't you want to talk about? And then we just go to the races. And it's just a lot of fun. And it's kind of like having a conversation with a friend. And it seems to be doing okay. People enjoy it. It's free. It's on YouTube.
Yeah. No, I saw a couple episodes. That's really awesome. I just didn't know if it was both of you or kind of how that.
Yeah, it's just the two of us. If you get a chance, non-adult film, the adult film star ones are interesting because they're all over the place. It'll give you an idea of how this is not a one-size-fits-all in that category. But the three Broadway guys are awesome. Patrick Page is a Shakespearean genius. I mean, the guy knows his stuff. Patrick Page, Alec Brightman, who plays Beetlejuice on Broadway right now, is the lead. He's awesome. And Dave Thomas Brown, who plays Elder Price in Book of Mormon. Three different leads in three amazingly popular, like top, other than Hamilton, top 3 plays on Broadway right now. And all of them come at things from a much different perspective. It's kind of like shows you. You can't lump actors together. You can't lump porn stars together. Can't lump Christian activists together. Everybody's different.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome. I'm gonna check that out. So I have Patrick, Alec, and then Dave Thomas Brown.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm checking that out. But
You'll
yeah,
enjoy
so yeah, just to finish up, just want to say thank you so much for your time. I would love to probably do this again in the future because this was amazing, more than I thought. So yeah, thank you so much, and have a nice day.
Yeah, you too. Glad to talk to you. Talk to you soon.